When Sister Norma Pimental, Pope Francis's favorite nun, was asked by a local mayor what she thought she was doing, she replied simply, restoring human dignity. Often, heartbreakingly, it is the dignity of children that she and her team are working to restore. The grand influx of immigrants crossing the border did not have an adequate place to rest. Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, with the help of the Sacred Heart Church, the City of McAllen, and as well as volunteers and donations, opened its doors to the Respite Center, located at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in McAllen, Texas. The center provides a place for the countless men, women, children, and infant refugees to rest, have a warm meal, shower, change into clean clothing, and receive medicine and other supplies before continuing on their journey. There will be a special Share the Plate collection for Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley during the offering. As of August of 2015, CCRGV has assisted over 23,000 individuals. Now we will hear from Sister Norma about her experiences. Sister Norma.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. So, it's been, many people always ask me, why is it that you do what you do? And back when I got started with this life that I chose to follow God in my life and to make him part of who I am. I remember my mentor, Sister Juliana Garcia, who has passed away. I was very young, and our community was very involved with immigrants. Border Patrol will actually bring them to our convent, to our house, to take care of the mothers and the children, because back then in the 80s, Border Patrol really didn't have space for families. It was mostly for adults and mostly men. And so when they came across a mother with a child, they didn't know what to do. So they would call our sisters, and especially Sister Juliana, who was a superior, and ask if she would take this family and this child. And of course she would say yes, and they would bring them to the house no matter what time of the day or night. Usually it was at night, past midnight, and receive them. So since the day I entered religious life, we always had a family with us, as part of our community. So our bishop back then, Bishop Fitzpatrick, he, at the time in the 80s, there was a lot of people from Central America migrating to the United States back then as well. Lots of them, so much so that the Rio Grande Valley became like a bottleneck of so many people that were arriving, literally almost hanging from the trees, as how many people were there. But, there was a home that was started to welcome these families once they entered the United States, and they actually would just, the Border Patrol wasn't apprehending and picking them up at the river. Pretty much they would pick them up when they get closer to, like, around this space, maybe Farfurias, or checkpoint. That's where really the border was, where everybody got picked up, and so they didn't worry very much about getting them just crossing the river like we are seeing today with all the things that are happening at the border right now at the river. Back then, people just crossed, and they managed to get to our house, which was in Bronzeville. And people would refer them to this shelter that was in Bronzeville, on the outside of the city of Bronzeville. And us, the sisters, missionaries of Jesus, were entrusted by our bishop to take care of the families, to focus on the humanity of the families, not worry about the politics, but rather just focus on taking care of these families and these children. And that's what we did. So back then there was a group of people that were questioning a lot of our politicians. Why is it that United States like congressmen, were voting in favor of sending our tax dollars to Central America, to especially Salvador, to support those wars that were happening over there, where the government of El Salvador was actually persecuting these families, innocent people that really were just working in their communities and trying to live a life, and they were being killed, tortured. And we were witnessing that because we were hearing their stories, you know. We were actually receiving them during the day and night when they would just arrive to the door of Casa Oscar Romero, that's what the house was called. And they were all dirty and muddy and wet, 'cause they had just crossed the river. Sometimes they would say, I crossed the 2 rivers. They said, no, 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 there's only one Rio Grande River. They said, but I did, I crossed and then I crossed again. And of course, the river, if you all know, goes around like this, you know. So poor guy, you know, he ended up crossing it twice, ended up back in Mexico. But anyway, they share their stories with us. Stories of how they were tortured. Terrible things that the government of these countries was doing. And we were supporting them. You know, the United States with our US tax dollars. Things like a young man would sit by in the evenings while I waited at night where everybody would go to sleep before I just go and sit myself, do my final prayers and pray with them. Show me his hands with not one single nail in his fingers, you know. That's the kind of tortures that, plus many others that were so horrible, the governments of these countries was doing to these families, these people that were arriving here to our country, fleeing the persecution and the abuses of these governments. So people were at the congressman's office one day, and we, Sister Juliana and myself, were going to lunch. And she says, Norma, let's go support these people. And she said, yes, Juliana. They are speaking up in defense of those who we help. We know their stories. We have seen the conditions that they come. The whole family arrives. So let's go show our support, because they're speaking to our congressman, questioning why is he in favor of sending $1 million a day to buy arms, ammunition, and destroy these communities, these innocent victims of in these communities in El Salvador, for example. So these people were going to do civil disobedience. At 5 o'clock, when they decided that the office was closed and they had to leave, they're going to say, nope, we're not leaving, arrest us. You know, I had no clue what that meant. I just knew I was going to go at noon and show our support. They were singing and praying, waiting for the congressman to show up or to answer them. He was in Washington, and he didn't. So the manager of the building was so upset that these people were there speaking and for these immigrants, illegal aliens as they were called. And he called the cops when we were there. He just arrived, and they started to arrest everybody. And Sister Juliana, we were toward the back, you know, she turns to me and she tells me, Norma, I was very young, must have been 25 years old, 26 years old at the most. She was much older, almost twice my age. And she tells me, Norma, cuando decimos que creemos en algo, when we say we believe in something, and then when things get tough, we run away, then we really don't stand for anything. We're nobody. So we both cannot get arrested because somebody's going to have to take care of the families. So you decide. So I was very young, and I thought to myself, I'm young and she's old. I, I guess it's me, right? And she says, okay, bye. And she just takes off, you know. Boy, was that a learning lesson to me, you know, facing up to what it means to stand up for what you believe. It was in those moments like that that she helped me define myself. Who is Norma? What do you stand for? Why are you willing to get arrested for these people? Why is it important? Everything that who I was before and who I was becoming came to the forefront to understand. You know, my dad was a man that would always say, Mija, if a cop tells you to move, you move, you know? You obey the law, you say yes, sir, no, sir. And here for the very first time, a cop was telling me, I'm going to arrest you if you don't leave. And my response was, arrest me. It's not easy to do that because you're facing up to realize what you stand for, you know, at a very big price, where they're going to put handcuffs on you, take you in the back of the police car, take you into the police station, get fingerprinted, get that famous picture where they show you, you know, your mug or whatever, and then put you in a cell. It was not easy. But I knew that I was saying yes to what I believe was right. Stand up to defend life. Because I heard those stories. I saw those fingers without nails. I saw those children. And I knew that it was something that we must do. We cannot be silent. We cannot just be comfortable and say, it's not my problem. There are people, as the beautiful song and that was reflected today, invisible to many of us here in the United States. People that somehow the system doesn't give them space to be included and be part of, because they don't quite fit into what the standard of our life must be or we want it to be. We leave out so many people out. So I think that we're called to be that voice, that presence that speaks up and says, what you are doing, what we are doing is not okay. We must be able to give them a voice. Not just be that voice to help them have a voice. Help them have a presence in our world, a dignified presence in the world. Because that day that the city official came into McAllen, Texas, where we were welcoming the immigrants, taking care of them because they were at our city dirty and muddy and crying and scared, little ones dehydrating. They were in terrible condition. That any human being should be able to be moved to say, let me help you. Let me see if I can give you water. Clean you up with all that dirty and mud that you have in your face and your bodies and your clothing. And help you be a little better than what you are. So yes, our center in McAllen, Texas at Sacred Heart Parish was packed instantly. The day that I chose to go to the bus station and invite all the immigrant refugees that were there at the bus station, left there by Border Patrol, I invite them, please allow me to help you. And with me was the whole community. Everybody that found out that Sister Norma was taking the people to Sacred Heart Parish Hall. How can I help, sister? How can I be part of what you're doing? We call through Facebook and social media each other and says, come to Sacred Heart. And they all did. Everybody in McAllen and in the surrounding areas of the valley, they came to Sacred Heart with clothing, with baby bottles, with milk, with everything we could think of that these families needed. And the whole parish hall instantly filled up with refugees, with children, and with families from the community helping them get cleaned up with wipes, because the parish hall only has a restroom and a little sink. So we start getting wipes to remove the mud and that's how we started. That first day that we started at the respite center in McAllen, Texas, and the officer just walks in and says, actually he was going to the bus station because he also heard that there was a mess at the bus station. And they were going to clean it up and figure out what to do, but se les adelantó la sister. And so I was there, and I was able to get everybody to the parish hall. So he followed me to wherever I ended up, which was Sacred Heart. And there he saw the whole parish hall packed with all kinds of things, mountains, honestly, totally of Pampers, food, everything you can imagine that people were hurting. Every heart in the Rio Grande Valley was touched. Everybody came forward and said, how can I help? Or came and volunteered to help. And has continued to do so since that day. And we've actually helped close to almost 500,000 people since that day we started. This person from the city, what are you doing here, sister? I was sure he was going to ask me all the things, violations of city codes that I was breaking. Turned and looked at the people that were present, those that were helping, those that needed help, and turned back and looked at this man, and I said, restoring human dignity. That's what we're doing. He didn't expect my answer because he took a step back, then came back and said to me, sister, if I had a magic wand, what would that do for you? And I said, showers? These people, how much mud can you remove with a wipey, you know? And these people have been walking for weeks, if not months, and dirty and sleeping on the grass and the bushes and just cross the river and they're all wet and all this. So that evening, we had a mobile unit of 8 showers. And the next day, the mayor said, anything she needs, you give to the sister. And sure enough, the Center of Sacred Heart became an amazing response of the community, all of us together. It didn't matter whether we were Republicans, Democrats, Catholics, you name, every single faith denomination was present. It was so interesting. One time we were doing a radio show outside of the center, live, and this guy asked they were asking questions, and sister was responding, and so he said, I'm Catholic, Sister Norma, but since you're doing this, and I'm very upset at what you're doing because we shouldn't be helping these illegal aliens, and I'm going to stop being Catholic. And I said, mijo, pues no sé qué vas a hacer. I don't know what you're going to be because all of us are here. You name it. Jewish, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Evangelical, you name us. We're here. Te quedas fuera, chico? You're out, We are one people, one community. We were all moved because we saw. I always invite everybody to come to the border, to come and see. But it is only unless you actually get close enough, you allow yourself, give yourself permission to get close enough and see that face, the face that I see, the children crying. When I visited the detention facility, I asked, I want to go see the children inside the detention facility. They had thousands of them inside of the detention facility. Just kids, not older than 10 years old, 5, 10 years old. All dirty and muddy, crying with their little faces full of tears. Nobody had ever got into a detention facility. It's a processing facility where really it's meant for just people to be processed after they're apprehended and then transferred to wherever they need to be transferred. But they couldn't do that. Border Patrol was forced to keep them there because they're kids, classified as unaccompanied children because they had separated them from whoever they came, because they didn't come with mom and dad. Then to protect the child, because it's not mom and dad, it could be a trafficker. And therefore, let's take the child and process the child and identify who is the immediate family member we need to send them. So it takes a longer process. That's the Department of Office of Refugee and Resettlement. They weren't prepared to manage and to help receive way over 1,000 or more kids. So they told Border Patrol, keep them there. But keeping them there meant keeping them in the detention facility that didn't even have showers, restrooms. They didn't have nothing. When you go into a cell, I think, in the jail, there is like a toilet in the back of the cell where everybody can go to, and the only thing is a brick wall, maybe about this high, and the toilet is behind that, and that's where anybody that needs to go to the restroom needs to go. That's what the children had, It was so packed of kids in those cells, so packed that children share with me that they would take turns closing their eyes to rest, standing up in the United States. I couldn't believe that we would not have another option but that, keeping them there. And they were crying, and I asked, please, I want to go in there. When I saw those little faces, because every cell had a big glass window, and all the little faces were looking at us. Big eyes just looking at us with all their faces full of tears. And I asked, I want to go inside with the children. And they said, no, sister, no, ma'am, you can't do that. I said, but I want to pray with them. Of course, how can you say no to a nun that wants to pray, right? So I got myself in there. But honestly, I think that has been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Not even going to jail that time they arrested me, as tough as that was. But being before all those little kids, I managed to get myself to the center of one of the cells. They were all pulling my dress, looking up at me, with their little faces full of tears, and telling me, sácame de aquí, por favor. Please, get me out of here. Quiero irme con mi mamá. ¿Qué hice yo? Just started to cry with them. And I said, let us pray. Dear God, please help us. And they said after me and prayed with me. And the officers were looking inside the window now. And they too were crying. So much so that when I walked out of there, the officer in charge told me, sister, thank you. You helped us realize they're human beings. This is why we must do what we do. This is why we must stand up and go forward and be willing to say yes. I want to be that voice. I want to be able to stand up and do what I need to do to defend humanity. We don't help them because they're immigrants or refugees. We help them because they're people. They're human beings. Like us, they all have a name, they all have a mother, they all have a brother, they have somebody. We cannot lose our humanity in the process of standing up to protect our country. Yes, we must defend and protect our country. Yes, we must have laws and know who enters our country. But we must not ever contribute to destroying life in any way, form, or shape. And what we're doing now today at the border, on the river, is hurting human lives. It is our country. And if we do things like that, it's because we allow it. We don't stand up to be that voice together to say, no, that is not right. Any law, any policy, anything that we do that destroys life is not good. We must rethink it and redo it in a way that life is respected, because we are one human family. So let us stand up and speak up and be that voice, that presence that we're called to be. Carers of this beautiful, wonderful earth, this world of ours. And the most important part of this world is us. Let us do that and learn to live and be that example to those that somehow have hardened their hearts and have, I always say, have been hijacked from truly, truly being honoring that presence of God in them. All by their own personal interest for power or whatever it is that draws them against any other human being. So what is happening today at the border is a lot of people that are hurting still, especially in Mexico. I go to Matamoros, Reynosa, the cities across. They are suffering. This heat that we are all don't like, right? It's terrible, it's so hot. But these people are outside in the sun, many of them just living out in the open fields by the river. In a tent, those tents that we use for maybe one night or 2 nights if we happen to go to a national park or somewhere, and we very uncomfortably enjoy that kind of space. But these people are there 24 hours every single day for months. And when the sun is so hot, they're there. And when it's very cold, they're there. And when it rains tremendously or whatever the environment brings them, they're there, suffering and hurting. Many of them are by the river right now in Matamoros. That's where there are several hundreds or thousands. And the river brings snakes and rats and mosquitoes. One time, one of the mothers sent me a picture of their little tent they had, and inside the tent, it was black inside of mosquitoes. I know that if I have one mosquito in my bedroom when I want to go to sleep, I won't go to sleep until I get that sucker, right? Can you imagine these families with thousands of mosquitoes? And for sure, or rats that go underneath the tents, eat up the cloth, and the children wake up with a rat nibbling in their ears. These are the conditions that these immigrants are suffering right now because they can't come into the United States, because they're hopeful that maybe they might be able to enter through the port of entry, through the bridge, with this new CBP-1 application that you can go online and get an appointment. But they try and try and try, and many of them get it, but others just wait there. It's like a lottery, let me try again tomorrow, and again tomorrow. And there been like one lady this week that I took my bishop to Matamoros, she has been trying for 9 months. It's tough. And the one thing that when we were there just this past week, Madre, lo que necesitamos es agua. That's all we need, water. We don't have enough water. We don't have enough food. So yes, we have work to do. And just focus on the humanity, the caring, the coming together to be part of our response to help another human being that needs our help. It is us that we must do it. And I says, well, you'll never resolve the problem because it's so much, it's so big. But it matters to that person that I gave some water. It matters whatever you do also matters. So let's do it. It is now that we must do things to make a difference in this world that is hurting. And we must show that there is also a beautiful side of life. And that is the one thing that I think if we can sum up God in one word, it is love. And every aspect and every way of expressing that love to every person we must do. Thank you.